رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه تبارك وتعالى في محكم كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولقد ضربنا للناس في هذا القرآن من كل مثل لعلهم يتذكرون. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. We are discussing parables in the Holy Quran. Examples that Allah Azza wa Jal sets forth for us in order to explain to us important concepts, important ideas. And of course, these ideas could only be relayed in the best manner using the parables, because Allah Azza wa Jal uses the best possible means of teaching human beings. In the previous nights we have looked at different parables, and tonight again, insha'Allah ta'ala, we will look at another parable from the Holy Quran, from Surah Al-Ankabut, in verse 41, where Allah Azza wa Jal says: مثل الذين اتخذوا من دون الله أولياء كمثل العنكبوت اتخذت بيتا وإن أوهن البيوت لبيت العنكبوت لو كانوا يعلمون. Allah Azza wa Jal is setting forth another parable for us. He is saying, the parable of those who take other guardians besides Allah Azza wa Jal, other awliya besides Allah Azza wa Jal, their example is the example of the spider when it weaves its web. And then he says, indeed the frailest, the weakest of houses is the house of the spider, if only people knew. So tonight we are looking at another parable. This time again Allah Azza wa Jal is talking about those people who take awliya, who take guardians besides Allah Azza wa Jal. And he says these people are like those who can be compared to the web of a spider, which is very weak, which is very frail. So let us begin first by examining this verse, and then inshallah we'll proceed to see the underlying meaning behind this parable. Allah Azza wa Jal, of course, in the Holy Quran uses the word Ankabut twice in this ayah itself. Ankabut is not mentioned anywhere else in the Quran. And when it comes to the name of the surah, which we also call Surah Al-Ankabut, there is a difference of opinion amongst scholars in general about how the surahs of the Holy Quran were named. Some scholars like Marhum Ayatullah Al-Khoi, may Allah elevate his station, and others like Murtada Alam Al-Huda, and even those like Hadi Ma'rifat, all of whom were great scholars, they say that the names of the surahs were decided by the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Which is known in technical terms as Tawqifi. Tawqifi means something that the Prophet himself decided. The Prophet himself named Surah Al-Baqarah Al-Baqarah, Surah Al-Ankabut Al-Ankabut. This is what these scholars say. But the contemporary living scholar who is the foremost mufassir of the Quran in the Shia world at present, Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli, has a different opinion. He says there are some surahs, yes, that the Prophet named himself, that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam named themselves. Like Surah Al-Ikhlas, Surah Al-Fatiha, and so on. He gives some examples. He says, but there are other surahs that were not named by them. And only later, people came and gave these names to these surahs. One example is Surah Al-Ankabut. He says, in the past, these surahs like Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah Al-Nisa, the name that was given was simply Suratun Tudhkaru Fiha Al-Baqarah. That was the name of the surah. The surah in which the story of the cow has been mentioned. Now because this name was very long, people slowly, instead of saying Suratun Tudhkaru Fiha Al-Baqarah, Suratun Yudhkaru Fiha Al-Nisa, and so on and so forth, they just made it Al-Baqarah, Al-Nisa, Al-Ankabut, and so on and so forth. So this is the opinion of Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli. And if we take this opinion, it means that the name Ankabut was not given to this surah by any ma'soom. It was given to the surah and it came to be known as Surah Al-Ankabut afterwards, and the people are the ones who named it thus. Now Ankabut itself is a very interesting word in Arabic. It means spider. But normally in Arabic, we have different words for masculine and feminine, different words for plural and singular. But Ankabut is such a word that it is used also for singular, also for plural, for male and for female. The male spider is Ankabut, female is Ankabut, one is Ankabut, many are Ankabut. This is something unique about this word. Let us look at the context of the revelation of this ayah now. You want to talk about the parable of the spider. What exactly are you giving us as a context? Look at the ayat that precede this verse, they come before this verse. When we read those ayat, we find that Allah Azza wa Jal is giving examples of nations in the past who were destroyed because they were mushrikeen and they ascribed partners to Allah Azza wa Jal. Because of the fact that they ascribed partners to Allah and they were mushrikeen, they were destroyed, and then Allah Azza wa Jal comes and gives us this parable. So this is the context in which this parable has been given in the Holy Quran. Now, why do you say that the weakest of houses is the house of the spider? وَإِنَّ أَوْهَنَ الْبُيُوتِ لَبَيْتُ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ. Who is saying? Allah Azza wa Jal is saying. So it deserves some attention. Allah is saying the weakest house is the house of the spider. So the Mufassirin say this is for three reasons. Firstly, generally when you say house, it means something which has a door, walls, a roof, something to protect you from the elements, to protect you from the cold of the winter, to protect you from the heat of the summer. But the house of a spider neither has walls, nor a roof, nor a door. This is the first reason. The second reason they give is generally your house is your refuge. When you want to protect yourself from your enemy, you will go and seal yourself inside your house. But look at the house of the spider. He cannot even take refuge there. And the third reason why it is awhanul buyut, the weakest and frailest of houses, is because something small is sufficient to damage it, to destroy it. If heavy rain falls, it can destroy the house of a spider. If torrents and winds blow at speeds that are high, it can destroy the webs of the spider. If a person or an animal passes by, they can easily destroy the house of a spider. And hence, when we keep this in mind, we realize indeed, inna awhana al-buyut labaytul ankabut. The weakest of houses is the house of the spider. Now when we look at the spider and the house of the spider in the riwayat, just out of curiosity, since it has come in the Quran, and indeed we know the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt are two sides of the same coin, we want to know what has the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam said about the house of the spider. And we find that indeed in our riwayat we have some interesting riwayat about the house of the spider. For example, we have one very interesting hadith which is known as Tawheed Mufaddal. You must have heard of this hadith. There was a companion known as Mufaddal ibn Umar. Mufaddal ibn Umar was the companion of our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. And one day Mufaddal was in Masjid al-Nabawi doing his a'mal, and he overheard two people talking, one of whom was Ibn Abil Awja. Ibn Abil Awja in Islamic history is a very notorious character. Why? Because he was an agnostic. An agnostic is someone who doubts in the existence of Allah, when compared to an atheist who is sure that there is no God. Alright, so he was an agnostic, he was a doubter. Does there really exist a creator of this universe, or did it come about on its own? And so Ibn Abil Awja was seated in Masjid al-Nabawi discussing with another person about whether really there is a creator or not. Or has this world come about by itself? And he said, I think that this world must have come about by itself, and he was giving his own arguments. And there was Mufaddal ibn Umar, one of the close companions of the sixth Imam, finished his a'mal, doing his taqibat. He couldn't help but overhear that conversation. So he came to them and he said, you people truly doubt the existence of a creator? How can you doubt the existence of a creator? And he tries to debate with them, but he is unable to convince them. So they tell him, Mufaddal, you cannot convince us. Why don't you go to your Mawla, Aba Abdullah as-Sadiq alayhi salam, and learn from him how to debate, and then come back to us. And that is when Mufaddal goes to the sixth Imam and he says, can you please teach me how to debate with these people? The Imam says, no problem, come. And the Imam sits with Mufaddal for 4 days, from the time of Fajr till the time of Dhuhr prayers. After Fajr prayers till Dhuhr prayers, 4 days. And Mufaddal would write down what the Imam is teaching him. And that became known as Tawheed al-Mufaddal, which we have even today. We have this hadith, it has even been translated into English. Although the translation has some problems, but generally it is good. And we have access to it, it is available. So 4 days the Imam sits with Mufaddal ibn Umar and he talks to him. On the first day, the Imam talks to Mufaddal about the human being and how Allah has created the human being. The beauty of the creation of the human being. The second day, the Imam talks to Mufaddal ibn Umar about the animal kingdom and how Allah has created the animal kingdom. The third day he talks about different things in the environment, in nature, the celestial bodies and so on and so forth. And the fourth day he addresses the question of natural disasters and calamities. So on that second day when he is talking to Mufaddal about the animal kingdom, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam tells Mufaddal about the spider and how it weaves its web, and how through weaving its web it catches its prey, that fly that comes and gets stuck in the web, and then how it feeds off that fly. The Imam alayhi salam explains in vivid detail how the spider makes its web and how it uses its web. Now I will leave it up to you, inshallah, to go and refer to this hadith, beautiful hadith, and inshallah we will all gain if we do so. This is one example of how the spider and the web has come in hadith. In the riwayat, we all know about how the spider and its web saved the life of Rasulullah Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. when he was in the cave of Hira. We all know it. When the mushrikeen of Quraysh were following him, they wanted to capture him, they wanted to kill him, and they come to the cave and the Prophet is inside the cave. But they see at the door of the cave, a spider has woven its web. And they say it's not possible for a human being to pass and enter inside a cave and the web is still intact. This is another example of how the spider and its web come in the riwayat. There is also one riwayah which is a bit weak, and there is discussion about its authenticity that tells us that we should not kill the spider. However, the teachings of Islam are very clear when it comes to those creatures that are harmful. When a harmful creature enters your home, or when a harmful creature is posing a threat to you, then you are allowed to kill that creature. But generally, if a spider is not doing you any harm, then it is better if we take this narration to avoid killing the spider. And in very early sources, before Al-Kafi even, we find one other narration about the web of the spider, in which we are told by Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. He says, نظفوا بيوتكم من حوك العنكبوت فإن تركه في البيت يورث الفقر. The Imam tells us, clean the cobwebs of the spiders from your houses, because if you leave their webs in your houses, it brings about poverty. And hence, the idea of how depending on other than Allah is something like the house of a spider, so weak and so frail, is what Allah uses as a parable to tell us that you should not take awliya or guardians besides Allah Azza wa Jal. And so the underlying message is that instead of depending on other than Allah, depend only on Allah. And hence we find that the underlying message is a message of at-tawakkul ala Allah. Depending, trusting, relying only on Allah Azza wa Jal. That is the message behind this parable. Don't take awliya, don't take guardians besides Allah. Meaning what? Meaning your only wali, your only guardian, the person whom you turn to, the person whom you depend upon should be only Allah Azza wa Jal. وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. Whoever depends on Allah, whoever relies on Allah, Allah is sufficient for him. You don't need anything else after that. We want to look now only at one or two ayat that talk about this concept of tawakkul, and then we expound further. In Surah Al-Imran, verse 159, part of which we recited the other day, it starts like this: فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. And then Allah continues, فَاعْفُوا واستغفر لهم وشاورهم في الأمر فإذا عزمت فتوكل على الله إن الله يحب المتوكلين. Allah Azza wa Jal, when he continues this ayah, he talks about at-tawakkul. فَاعْفُوا لَهُمْ, forgive them. وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ, forgive them, pray for their forgiveness. وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ, take their advice, take their opinions. The Prophet is being told that you should take advice from the people, and then you take the decision yourself. فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ, once you have taken the decision, فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ, then now you have to do tawakkul. You have to rely only on Allah. Why? إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُتَوَكِّلِينَ. Allah loves those people who rely only upon Him. So when you love Allah, you want Him to love you. You want Him to love you, become one who relies only on Him, and He will love you. And then in the next verse we are told, إِن يَنْصُرْكُمُ اللَّهُ فَلَا غَالِبَ لَكُمْ. If Allah helps you, nobody can defeat you. وَإِن يَخْذُلْكُمْ فَمَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَنْصُرُكُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِهِ. And if He abandons you, who is there who can come to your aid after He has abandoned you? وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. And therefore the believers must have tawakkul only on Allah Azza wa Jal. These two verses of Surah Al-Imran, verse 159, 160, have the core message of tawakkul in them, of reliance on Allah Azza wa Jal. And when you rely on Allah Azza wa Jal, of course Allah will love you, He will help you, but you strengthen yourself. You become a strong person in society. Why? Because now you are not indebted to anyone, you are not subservient to anyone but Allah Azza wa Jal. And that is why our seventh Imam, Imam Musa al-Kadhim salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, he says, إِذَا أَرَدْتَ أَن تَكُونَ أَقْوَى النَّاسِ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. If you want to be the strongest of people, then rely only on Allah. So somebody asked him, سئل عليه السلام عن حد التوكل. Somebody asked him about the limits of tawakkul. What is tawakkul? He said, أن لا تخاف سواه. That you should not fear anyone other than Allah Azza wa Jal. This is tawakkul. And if you have that reliance on Allah and no fear for anything or anyone other than Allah Azza wa Jal, you gain an inner strength, an inner power. You find that you can face anyone, you can face any odds, any difficulties. You are not afraid. Allah is with you. That is sufficient. One time, our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, it is said that he was, after one of the battles, resting under a tree. And so one of the enemies came and he saw his sword lying on the ground, and he picked up the sword of the Holy Prophet, and then he tells the Prophet, he puts the sword to his neck and says, Ya Muhammad, who is going to save you now? The Prophet looks at him without hesitation, very calm. He says, Allah will protect me. When that man sees the tranquility of the Prophet and the calmness of the Prophet with the sword at his neck, he starts trembling and he drops the sword. Now the Prophet picks up the sword and he turns to that man and says, who is going to protect you now? And the man is dumbfounded. He cannot say anything. He says, forgive me, Ya Rasulullah. And the Prophet forgives and he accepts Islam. This is tawakkul. When you have tawakkul, Allah is your protector. If Allah is your protector, who can do anything to you? Is there any power beyond Allah, greater than Allah? No. There was a man who always used to do tawakkul ala Allah. He would always trust Allah in everything. And because of that, Allah would always protect his wealth. His wealth was protected. Whenever the thieves would enter the city, they would enter all the shops, they would not enter his shop. And so the people started having jealousy for him. He said, what is it? They steal from us, they don't steal from him. His secret was tawakkul. So one day he was traveling with his business friends, and they decided, when they reached one place, when he was sleeping, they decided, let us play a trick on him. We will take all his money and we will take all his goods and we will bury it under the ground. When he wakes up, he will be perplexed and worried about his goods and his money. And so while he's sleeping at night, they hide everything of his under the ground. And it just so happens that that very night, bandits come and steal everything from everyone. But the goods they had hidden of this man under the ground is saved. Why? At-tawakkul ala Allah. Rely on Allah. Now tawakkul obviously does not mean that you sit doing nothing. And somebody says, no, I trust in Allah, I don't need to work. No. Allah clearly says in the Quran, وَأَن لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. Insan will not get anything except what he strives for. You work, you strive, and then you have tawakkul ala Allah. So this idea of tawakkul does not negate hard work. You say, وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ after you have worked. But then obviously there are many things that are beyond our control. The human being is a weak creature. There are many things that are beyond our control. And when things happen which are beyond our control, that is the prime time when you have to do tawakkul ala Allah. And so we find that one day the Holy Prophet was looking up at the sky and he was smiling. And the companions obviously were curious. Ya Rasulullah, what is causing you to smile? You are happy. What is causing this happiness? And the Prophet says, I saw two malaika coming down. And these malaika were responsible for writing down the deeds of one of the servants of Allah Azza wa Jal. And they were used to coming down at this time and finding this servant of Allah in his musalla praying to Allah. But today they came down and they saw that he was not in his musalla. And they looked around and they saw that he was not well, so he was sleeping on his bed. They went back to Allah and said, Oh Allah, your servant today is not praying and he is not well, he is sleeping on his bed. So Allah told them, no, you write for him the a'mal that he does all the time. I have taken his health, so I am responsible for taking his health. And therefore his a'mal are still in its place. Write it down. When I saw this, I smiled. When I saw this, I smiled. Things that are not in our control, they are in the control of Allah Azza wa Jal. And Allah is not going to take you to account for something which is not in your control. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا ما آتاها. And so when something is out of your control, you have tried your best, but now it is outside your control, then you say, وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَصِيرٌ بِالْعِبَادِ. Oh Allah, I have done my best. You are only responsible for your best, not more than that. You do your best, leave the rest to Allah Azza wa Jal. One of the best examples of tawakkul in the Quran is the tawakkul that we see that was done by the Ashabul Kahf, the people of the cave, the sleepers of the cave. These were young men. They were aristocrats in the community. They were influential people in the community. They had the ear of the leader of that community. They would be advisors to that leader, to that ruler. But when they saw that now they were being pressurized to abandon their faith in the one true God, they decided that they would not abandon their belief in Allah Azza wa Jal. And therefore, when they were found out to be monotheists, when they were found out to be believers in one God, then they were given an ultimatum. They were told 3 days you are given to revoke and recant your beliefs. And they decided that we will not do this. And so they leave the city and they go to the cave. إِذْ أَوَى الْفِتْيَةُ إِلَى الْكَهْفِ فقالوا ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا. They said, Oh Allah, they went into the cave and they said, Oh Allah, now we are at your mercy. We have done what we can. We are at your mercy. And Allah Azza wa Jal, by His mercy and His grace, He keeps them alive. He protects them for so many years, and then He causes them to wake up again. They wake up again and they look around and they see, they go outside, they realize that they have been asleep for generations. This is the result of at-tawakkul ala Allah. You just put your trust in Allah and leave everything to Him. And you will find how wondrously He causes all your problems to vanish. He causes all the difficulties to go away. This is the importance of at-tawakkul ala Allah. Now when we talk of tawakkul, there are certain darajat of tawakkul. There are certain levels of tawakkul. Our 8th holy Imam, Imam Ali al-Ridha, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, he says, at-tawakkul darajat. There are levels of tawakkul. فيها أن تثق بالله في أمورك كلها. One of the darajat, منها, one of the darajat, أن تثق بالله في أمورك كلها. One daraja of that is that you rely on Allah in all your affairs. This is one daraja. And the scholars have narrated that there are 3 levels of tawakkul. The first level is that you take Allah Azza wa Jal to be like a wakil, like a representative who is trustworthy, who will do things for you. If you have a wakil, if you have a lawyer, if you have a representative whom you trust, you can even give him the key of your house, you can give him the key of your car. He's a trustworthy person. You know that he will take care of what belongs to you. That is just the lowest level of tawakkul. The lowest level is that you take Allah as a wakil. A level higher than that of tawakkul is that your relationship to Allah, as far as tawakkul is concerned, is like that of a baby to its mother. A baby trusts its mother completely. A child will never doubt its mother. A baby will never tell his or her mother, are you sure this is good for me to drink or to eat? No. Whatever is put in front of the child by the mother, without a doubt, they will consume. But if somebody unknown comes to them and gives them something, they will examine it, look at it, probably ask the parent, should I have this or not? So that relationship of a child to his mother is the second daraja of tawakkul, such that you rely on Allah completely, without questioning the hikmah of Allah Azza wa Jal. If Allah wants you to suffer, you suffer. You say, oh Allah, no problem. I completely trust in you. I know that what you will do for me is the best. Today we were having a discussion with Maulana on this habit that some of us have of istikhara. Istikhara is good, there is no problem. You want, sometimes you are in a fix and in a dilemma, and you want to know what Allah Azza wa Jal wants you to do. So you take out istikhara. There is no problem. But there are times when, if you do tawakkul, فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. You have taken advice, you have used your intellect, you have come to a decision, and then you do tawakkul. You say, oh Allah, I have done my best in trying to distinguish what is good and what is bad, and now I am taking a decision, I am relying on you. That is better. That heightens your tawakkul. That heightens your trust and reliance in Allah Azza wa Jal. So the second level is a level where your tawakkul is like that of a child to his mother. And the third and highest level of tawakkul is where now you don't have your own will or your own desire or your own irada. Whatever Allah wills is your will. Whatever He desires is your desire. Whatever is His irada is your irada. And this was the level of Nabiullah Ibrahim alayhi salam. And that is why when he was being thrown into the fire, Jibreel alayhi salam comes to him and says, Ya Nabi Allah, can I help? He's in mid-air right now. He has been thrown by the catapult, heading into that huge fire. Ya Nabi Allah, can I do anything to help? Do you need help? He says, yes, amma minka fala. I need help, but from you, no. Okay, you don't need help from me. Why don't you pray to Allah? Why don't you do dua to Allah? He says, hasbi min su'ali ilmuhu bihali. I do not need to ask Allah. He knows my state. He knows what I am undergoing. I don't even need to ask. My will is His will. He wants me to burn. I am ready to burn. This is the highest level of tawakkul. And so we should start trying to inculcate tawakkul in ourselves, and inshallah slowly and gradually reach the higher darajat of tawakkul. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The last point before we conclude. Tawakkul has many benefits that are social benefits as well. When a person has tawakkul, that tawakkul removes certain psychological ailments in that person. For example, one problem that many of us are facing today in the world is the problem of depression. Depression is a disease. It comes about in life. But when a person has tawakkul, that tawakkul helps to fight away and to remove depression. Stress, anxiety, problems, difficulties in life. If you have tawakkul, it all becomes easy because now somebody else is handling your affair. Somebody more powerful is handling your affair. So you have sakina, you have itmi'nan in your heart. You are calm, you are tranquil. And so trying to inculcate this will have benefits in this dunya also for one who does so. So inshallah we pray to Allah Azza wa Jal to grant us all the ability to become more amongst the mutawakkilin, amongst those who depend and rely only on Allah Azza wa Jal. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In Karbala, we find that even non-Muslims had a role that they played. And in particular, Christians, we know that on the day of Ashura, Wahab had come. Wahab was not a Muslim, and he was passing by. He was a Christian, a young man who had just gotten married. And he sacrificed his life for Aba Abdullah. He became one of the shuhada of Karbala, a status and a station that all of us pray and desire. We always tell Aba Abdullah, Ya laytana kunna ma'akum, fanafuza fawzan azima. Oh Aba Abdullah, oh how we wish we would have been with you, so that we would have also gained. Tonight I want to mention the story of another Christian, a man who had come to Rasulullah during the time of the Holy Prophet and said to the Holy Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, I don't have children and I want you to do dua for me so that I can get children. The Holy Prophet points to Hussein. Hussein at that time is a young boy. He tells that Christian monk, go and ask my grandson to pray for you. He goes to Hussein and says, could you please pray for me? Aba Abdullah raises his hands and says, oh Allah, grant this man children. Many years later, during the time of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, this Christian man comes and meets Aba Abdullah. Now Aba Abdullah is an old man. He tells him, do you remember me? When you were a young man, you prayed for me. Imam says, yes, I remember you. Did Allah bless you? He said, yes, Allah blessed me with 7 sons. Where are you staying? He said, I am staying in Halab. Will you come and visit me, Yabna Rasulullah? He said, yes, I will come to visit you. But he did not tell the man in what state he was going to come and visit him. After the advent of Karbala, when the heads were being taken from Kufa to Sham, they passed by Halab and they wanted to rest in a monastery. So they knocked the door of that monastery and the same old Christian monk came out. Ibn Ziyad tells the monk that we are tired and we want to rest. Can you allow us to rest? He says, yes. When he comes out and he looks at the heads of the shuhada, he points at one head and he tells Ibn Ziyad, whose head is that? Ibn Ziyad doesn't want to tell him. He tells Ibn Ziyad, I want you to give me that head for one night only. I can see Noor coming out from that head. He tells Ibn Ziyad, one night only, I am ready to give you my life savings. He gives the money to Ibn Ziyad. He takes the head of Abu Abdullah. He enters inside his monastery. Now, the riwayah tells us that he starts cleaning the head of Abu Abdullah. He starts washing away the blood from the head of Abu Abdullah. He doesn't recognize person is, and then once the head has been cleansed, he turns to the head and he says that I ask you in the name of Isa ibn Maryam and his mother Maryam to tell me who you are. There is no reply, and then he says I ask you in the name of Muhammad and his daughter Fatima. And then a voice comes out from the head of Imam Hussein. He says, أم حسبتم أن أصحاب الكهف والرقيم كانوا من آياتنا عجبا. Do you think that أصحاب الكهف are a great sign? I, Hussein ibn Ali, is a greater sign of Allah Azza wa Jal. When the man recognizes that this was Hussein, he calls his wife and they start doing matam for Abu Abdullah. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة.